Before we get started, yeah, there's a lot to cover. So this was a request from one of the wonderful Subscribe Star Bros. It's a great pick, by the way, but this video almost got delayed because I had to deal with a TOS strike on the channel. The bots decided a stream from over a year ago was naughty, so they hit me with it. Thankfully it was resolved, but they went scorched earth. Couldn't do anything for 7 days, lost monetization, memberships were ripped away, whole kit and caboodle. Thanks to everybody who stuck their neck out to help with the issue. Kirsch was one of the big names that really pushed for the strike to be lifted. It's definitely appreciated, and hopefully we won't have to deal with this anymore for the rest of the year. I just screwed myself, didn't I?
Was there anything that you miss about Restrepo, about the Korengal Valley?
Oh yeah, I'd rather be there than here.
Hey, you're not in the Korengal to go and hunt the bad guys. You're in the Korengal so the bad guys come to you and you kill them.
As bad as it may be, we have to continue. You know, we can't sit there and, and just cry. And the thing, we'll do that. You know, if you're gonna cry, you do it.
After he went down, it was a time where actually I didn't care about anything. I didn't care if I died or not.
This is a documentary series that's one hell of a rabbit hole. You see, Korengal and Restrepo follow the story of an American unit staying at Firebase Restrepo, located deep in what's known as the Valley of Death, an absolute hotbed of Taliban activity that ended up having some of the most combat engagements during the entire American occupation of Afghanistan. Both documentaries were created by journalists Tim Hetherington and Sebastian Junger, who stayed with the 173rd Airborne Brigade combat team. Yeah, they stayed a whole year with the unit, and both documentaries are essentially a part 1 and part 2. You see the unit as they're deployed to the valley, and stay with them until they finally leave. This is actually the first time I'm covering a documentary, and this is one hell of a start to pick. So you have the obvious makings of a documentary, interviews with the subjects, raw footage shot during their time at the base, even rawer footage that was shot as they were getting shot at. There's a lot to these documentaries. Now, war documentaries are a pretty underrated genre. There's some pretty great ones out there, and they're stuck in a very niche circle. Only the Dead is a pretty fearless look at the invasion of Iraq and the rise of ISIS, with multiple moments where the narrator damn near gets himself killed, putting himself in increasingly crazy circumstances.
I lost him, blinded without night vision, and suddenly alone in a house full of death. And then it went quiet.
Armadillo follows a unit of Danish soldiers during their time in the Middle East. Though the most famous at the moment has to be They Shall Not Grow Old, which interviews veterans of World War I with footage restored, colored, and even had sound added to them by Peter Jackson. There's a reason that one had a lot of attention on it.
We just slept where we were. No beds, just flopped down on the ground.
Still, this is a subgenre that aims to sort of demystify war, show soldiers for who they are, the situation they're in, and explore the day-to-day of their deployment. They can absolutely be hard to watch, since they explore themes of PTSD, loss, they show actual war footage more than a few times, and also just the cost that this lifestyle puts on the soldiers. Korengal and Restrepo both cover all of these in spades. A large chunk of what makes these documentaries appealing is if you have any familiarity with military culture. I grew up around military stuff. I never joined, but I had multiple friends and families who did, so I didn't really have an issue with understanding these guys and why they do the things they do. Sure, on the outside they look like dumb dude bros just shooting guns in the middle of a mountain, but there's way more to them once you get why they act like this. I said before in the Generation Kill video that being in the military is like any other blue-collar job. You have guys working with shitty circumstances on a shitty schedule, and they have to improvise way too much to solve issues that shouldn't be as complicated as the bosses make them. And these documentaries embody this point pretty well, as a large part of both is letting you get to know the men going into the valley. Their interviews break down their home lives, how they see their time in the military, how they see the situation. You get different perspectives and all sort of show the different types of guys that join the army. You have the career veteran that's been in the service for a while to the point the lingo and mindset are second nature to them. The younger guys that are open, that they're just excited about leaving the army and going home. The guys who get more bitter and cynical. The ones who just sort of take it all in stride, going with the flow of things. The guys who unfortunately see way too much and are clearly messed up by it. Now, the occupation of Afghanistan is a complicated subject. It's an entire rabbit hole of history in and of itself, especially after recent events, mainly the mass withdrawal from the nation, which left it in the hands of the Taliban, whole thing on its own. It's one of these cases where from the get-go, the whole situation was just a bad idea, as it was an attempt by America to secure a position in the Middle East after the Soviets were pushed out of the country, which caused major issues due to America's friendly relationship with Israel, which isn't exactly a good thing if you're trying to buddy up with a Muslim country. yeah, the whole thing, as stated. On top of that, the mission structure for Afghanistan was always vague. America was sent in to help rebuild and provide assistance and infrastructure, pouring countless amount of dollars and resources to modernize Afghanistan and trying to have flipped it out of the collection of tribes and rural villages that it was. Unfortunately, the locals viewed it as America trying to turn them into a puppet, and culture clash after culture clash just turned the whole thing into a disaster. The locals resented the Americans, and the Americans grew to resent the locals. Something that the documentary explores, with the soldiers feeling like this was all just a game of musical chairs. One day you're handing a guy a bag of rice and school supplies for his kids, the next day he's hiding behind his kids as he's taking potshots at you and your buddy, and you're expected to just keep going and try to win over this group of locals that do not like you.
Hearts and minds goes out the window when you see the guy shooting at you and then he puts his wife and kids in front of him, knowing full well that we won't shoot back. You know, fuck his heart and his mind. You know, he obviously doesn't have a heart if he's willing to sacrifice his wife and kids just to shoot a couple rounds at us. Or the guy that comes, you know, shakes our hand, takes the 10 bags of rice we give him for his family and the school supplies and the coats, and immediately walks up the mountain and shoots an RPG at us, walks back down and smiles the next morning when he's walking his goats. Yeah, fuck his heart and fuck his mind.
And that's only made worse when guys like the Taliban are going around forcing villagers to work with them or bribing them to set up traps and ambushes. Korengal was an especially dangerous area. Firebase Restrepo was attacked damn near every single day, in some way, shape, or form. So the guys that went in were way over their heads. There was legitimate fear the base could be overrun, which Captain Kearney thought was only prevented because he made sure to send his guys out on as many patrols as possible, since, as he put it, they were on the offense so much the Taliban couldn't organize an invasion. Of course, that's just how he saw it, as other soldiers in the platoon saw him as a glory hound or were pushing them too much, almost using them like bait. Each man has his own perspective, views, and lesson they took away from their time in the Korengal. Both documentaries take a lot of time to humanize the subjects and make them relatable. These are guys you really do feel for. You don't want them to die. They know the situation is completely screwed up and they're just doing the best they can. And they have this undying loyalty to each other that is something that other people simply won't understand. Multiple times they say that they wouldn't hesitate to go back to deployment. Even the guys that you see openly talking about their plans after leaving the army all say they wouldn't think twice about going back, because they aren't thinking about their own lives or the inconvenience on them, instead seeing it as a chance to help out other guys so they can come home as well. I think the best part about these documentaries is they never try to moralize or talk down to the audience. It's simply showing you who these guys are and letting you form your own perspective on what they did, how they are, how they acted. Whether you see them as heroes or baby killers, it's all up to you. You see them joking about how they saw a guy they shot at turn to mincemeat, them reeling from the death of a friend, to the quiet excitement they have that they're about to go home. And it's especially funny when you look up interviews with Sebastian Junger, who clearly has some interesting philosophies on human nature and his views on society.
As wealth goes up in a society, as modernity goes up in a society, the suicide rate goes up. The depression rate goes up. Schizophrenia goes up in urban environments. They're not good for the human psyche. We evolved to live in groups of 30, 40 people in a harsh environment, totally interreliant on one another for survival. That creates a huge amount of equality within a group and loyalty within a group. That's what we are designed for genetically.
His interest in the military comes from his views on tribe culture, that people are at their happiest when they're part of a connected tribe that all contributes something to each other. Adversity and challenge makes people feel needed, which is a massive part of military culture. Something is constantly going wrong and everyone needs to be doing something at all times. Firebase Restrepo especially had something going wrong all the time. You can argue that Sebastian Junger viewed the unit as almost similar to a tribe of Native Americans, as his book Tribe was all about him researching native culture before the arrival of the colonials. And it's not the worst comparison. While not nomadic, as they had to stick to their base, there's a similar DNA with how you have a small, compact group all having to contribute something to keep the whole thing going, which is why some veterans are so willing to go back or have trouble at readjusting to life as a civilian. There's a deep down innate desire in humans to matter, to have a purpose, and do a job they feel like they're good at. That's even why there's such a loyalty to military culture among veterans, because that was a place they belonged in and were good at. It gave them purpose, meaning in life. I mean, it makes sense. It's an interesting theory and does make you think about how modern society tends to clamp down on these instincts, turning them into complexes that drive everyone crazy. How many different stories have you read of some guy just snapping because he felt like life was pointless and there wasn't anything to strive for? Political extremism is similar, as it's people so desperate to fight for a cause they go insane and hurt others for the sake of giving themselves a battle to win. It's also why post-apocalypse settings are so appealing to audiences. The fantasy of being in a do-or-die setting where you have to figure out what you're good at or else you're not going far. Zombie stories are still a massively popular genre for this exact same reason. Now, this is purely if you take Junger's perspective into account. If you want to ignore it and have your own interpretation of Korengal, you're free to do so. Some see it as a love letter to the army, a fearless breakdown on the daily routine of what a soldier truly is, exploring the pointlessness of the occupation of Afghanistan. There's a ton of different aspects to both documentaries that you can see as the point of both films. It's not there to force a message down your throat. Instead, it's there so you can understand the situation and the guys dealing with it. Whether you hate their guts or buy them a drink is how do you view the military in the occupation of Afghanistan. Personally, I saw these guys as very sympathetic and truly do feel for them. What they went through was not a small thing, and they no doubt had a hell of a time trying to switch off that part of themselves so they could fit in with the rest of the civilian world. Even if you think the military is some purely evil organization, at the very least have some empathy for the guys who are serving in it, because they are doing something that will change them for the rest of their lives, and they do need support. It's why I like war documentaries, because it gives you this perspective on life. Here we are, sitting in a safe room, on the internet, maybe doing a boring job or playing video games, and here's these guys, having bullets whiz past their heads and seeing their friends die. Makes you appreciate what you have and also to understand others, you know? Even if you think your life sucks, trust me, it could be a lot worse. And that's something that's special to this style of documentary. We see military media all over the place. Big movies, miniseries, History Channel shows that mainly explain details from a detached, larger picture perspective. But things like Korengal and Restrepo make it so much more small scale and personal. These aren't actors. They're real men really dealing with a life-threatening situation. The gravitas and spectacle is taken away. You see how it is and just have to accept things as they are. Whether it's good, bad, tragic, funny, horrifying, it's just how it is. Your opinion doesn't really matter. Still, I really like these documentaries. They're very well made and tell a story that isn't like many others. Sure, it's just some more documentaries, but really think about that. These specific guys in this specific time were able to have their time recorded and published. People know about Restrepo, the medic who was killed that ended up being the inspiration behind why it's called Firebase Restrepo. This is a real guy who was really killed, and now he won't be forgotten. It's tragic, but at least there's some form of a silver lining that he's not just gonna fade away. This is a specific story about a unique group of men at a very unique period of time. Yeah, sure, you can argue that's just any other footage of soldiers fucking around in Afghanistan, but I don't know, the fact that it is so personal and we are able to know who these guys are, it definitely makes you happier that these exist than if it just went under the radar and fade away and you could never find a copy anymore, you know what I mean? Hell, if you want to know something even more tragic, one of the directors of the documentary couldn't even see Korengal be released. Tim Hetherington was killed sometime in 2011 while he was trying to cover the Libyan civil war, but at least he'll be remembered with Restrepo and Korengal and his legacy of being a legit war journalist who did his best to get the truth. And really, this is about all I can say about Korengal and Restrepo. There isn't some big plot to decipher or characters to analyze. These are about your average, everyday dude in the military. The point of these documentaries are the experience you get watching them to see how you feel about the situation and how well these guys did during their time in Afghanistan. I definitely recommend checking both of these out. Now, Korengal is a million times easier to find than Restrepo. It's on Apple TV, Amazon, you can even get it on YouTube. Restrepo is only available on Apple TV, which is better than how it was before. Just a few years ago, it wasn't available anywhere and had to rely on pirate torrents to track it down, which sucks. Definitely a good reason to pay attention to physical media. You don't appreciate what you have until it's gone. Still, definitely sit down and watch these. There's a reason I'm keeping this so brief, because really, I don't want to just explain the whole thing to you. You should sit down and watch it and see this for yourself. I can't promise this is the most exhilarating or intense thing you're ever going to watch, but it definitely does its job. You will feel something at the end of it. What that is, I don't know what to say, but you're gonna feel it. Still, do you want to know what won't leave you behind to go fight in a war? Gamer Subs, use code TALL at checkout for 10% off your order. They have new cup designs and flavors in the works. There's so much cool stuff for you to be excited for. Get excited. Use the code. Use the code. Use the code or you're going back to Afghanistan. Use the code. Still, that's about all I can say about Korengal and Restrepo. These are great documentaries that have a lot to say, and you should absolutely sit down and watch both. They're pretty quick films to get through. Restrepo's only about 93 minutes, and Korengal is barely over 80. You really don't even have to make a day to watch these, just set aside a few hours. You definitely won't regret it. I really like these documentaries and hope that you'll find as much enjoyment in them as I did. Can't exactly say they're fun, but you're not watching these for fun, it's to think, and these documentaries definitely make you do that. So, That's about all I can say. Till next time, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys.
And look how sexy he is. I mean, look at this guy. He's a beautiful man. I'd fuck him back in the States.
Hey, loser. Do you want a shirt? Do you want a t-shirt? I have shirts now. Look in the description for a link to a t-shirt you can buy. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll kill your family. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll poison your dog. If you don't buy the t-shirt, you're going to be the only person in town that does not have a t-shirt. Everyone's going to look at you funny. There's going to be social consequences to not having one of these t-shirts. I'm now making express threats of violence against you if you do not buy my t-shirt. I will call the police, tell them how you're not buying my shirt. They're gonna plant crack in your house, and they're gonna arrest you and then beat you up in a jail cell. Buy my shirt.
Face down in the gutter, won't admit defeat, though his clothes are soiled and black. He's a big, strong man with a child's mind. Don't you take his booze away. At it 4 years, drinking balls and beers. He's a hero to most we meet. But inside he cries like swollen eyes. This man is just no tears. Now his wife and kids sing a different tune as they worry about their daddy.